Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright, speaking. And, as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, 2016 has really shaped up to be a disappointing year. For starters, the election cycle, which we have been covering for a year and 3 months now, shaped up to be a major letdown. It's a major letdown because the Constitution has been utterly ignored by both sides of the political aisle. It comes as no surprise that the Democrats ignore it. They don't even really attempt to pay lip service to it anymore. However, the Republicans are a major letdown. This isn't to say that the Republican Party didn't abandon its constitutional stance some time ago. We all knew that to be the case. But that being said, this is the most that they have ever gone away from it. Openly embracing populism is a very bad idea. The annals of history are full of examples of the utter failure of populism. Folks, there really is no way around this fact. It's something that has been demonstrated time and again. Andrew Jackson embraced populism, and that accelerated the nation's plunge into the Civil War. Herbert Hoover plunged into populism, and that worsened the Great Depression. Populism and Fabianism go hand in hand. That's just the nature of such a disastrous political system. It has no place in an open, honest, but above all free society like that of the United States. We here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have been warning for 1 year and 3 months about the dangers posed to our society from these charlatans who wrap themselves in the mantle of the people. While it is true that our Constitution's preamble begins with the line, "We the people," populism twists the meaning of that. At its core, populism is destructive. That's all it seeks to do. Utilizing the dark semantics of the left, populism claims to seek the utter destruction of the quote-unquote establishment. Of course, whether such a position is good or not depends on one's definition of the so-called establishment. We know that the term has been used loosely, particularly on the Republican side. I understand that this is just a way of trying to distinguish oneself from the leadership of the party, which has assumed a position which stands in stark contrast to the dreams, hopes, and future aspirations of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. Nevertheless, the movement that has been built under President-elect Donald J. Trump is not merely speaking to the head of the party. They have formed deals with the elite who thumb their noses at the base of the party. This is just what we're facing. No, their main goal is to work around the Constitution, thereby weakening it over the long haul.
You know, there's a real small facet with regards to populism that we've been seeing play out over the past week and a half or so. Came right on the heels of Trump's tweet regarding people burning the flag. See, populism, it's an invasive species. It's kind of like that encroaching vine or encroaching ivy, where it starts to spread. And once its taproot is set, it spreads, and you can't kill it unless you get rid of the taproot. You have to kill the taproot first. One of these vines that has spread is regarding the flag burning. And Randy, I'm still pissed off about the way that individuals who know better, are still trying to sanctimoniously think that their view on what free speech is or what it curtails and entangles is justified, but at the same time, they're all for everything else that is right along the same lines. The example of burning the flag. It is a freedom of expression, period. Anybody that says otherwise, they have no idea what speech is. Speech is a form of expression. Okay? Freedom of speech. If a deaf person cannot speak or hear, and they have to use sign language, they are expressing their thoughts, what is on their mind, in a form of an action. It's the same thing that our founding fathers did at the Constitutional Convention when they had their civil discourse and their arguments. They were adamantly opposed. Yes, they were speaking, but there was even actions of individuals standing up silently and walking out as a form of expression to convey a message to them. But these same individuals that think it's okay to say that, well, expression is not part of freedom of speech, they're the same individuals that are just perfectly fine with taking something like the Quran and torching it. Now, I don't agree with the Muslim religion at all. However, it is still a religion, per se. It is still practiced here in the United States by individuals who follow that religion. Why? Because the individuals that are here that have converted are U.S. citizens, somewhat. Vast majority of them are. However, there are people who are not U.S. citizens, but I digress on that. The point is, the citizens that are here that have converted to Muslim or the Muslim religion,
Islam,
they're still United States citizens. So if they're burning our flag and they do it in opposition of people burning the Quran, see, the Quran is a symbolic image for them. It's symbolism, just like the flag is symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can't disagree with one and then support the other. That makes you a hypocrite. Everybody wants to have all these Quran burnings. You know what? That's fine. Give me a Quran. Give me a torch. I'll light the book up myself. I have no problem with that. Why? Because it's protected under my First Amendment. Same with burning the flag. But this is the danger of populism. Because when it encroaches into people, into the marketplace of ideas, and people start adopting it and show the hypocritical nature with it, that's what populism seeks out to achieve. They want the infighting. They want to drive as big a wedge in between people. They don't care what it takes to do it. And using something like burning the flag to spark controversy between people who are constitutionalists, what better way of doing it? And thus, this comes full circle back to Roger Nash Baldwin's agenda and stated purpose of the ACLU, to use the Constitution to destroy the Constitution.
Yeah. And the other thing that it does is it basically allows them to push for this tyranny of false unity that we've warned about so many times before. And what it ultimately comes to as a head here is what we named this night's episode to be. Folks, we've entitled this episode as The Seduction of Victory. I'm sure that many of you within our cherished listening passengers and audience members are wondering why we might choose to name tonight's show after such a thing. Well, it's because there is clearly a movement within the GOP which seeks to shed themselves of the positions that they have espoused for decades in order to intoxicate themselves with the sweet nectar of victory. Truth be told, this is a truly disgusting position to take. I know that we have oftentimes mentioned this on previous episodes of the Wright Flyer, but it's so on point that it bears repeating here. Founding Father Samuel Adams claimed that in order for our republic to be successful, we have to be a virtuous people. In other words, we must be people of good moral fiber and standing. When you think of virtuous people, you think of honesty, people who don't attempt to deceive their fellow countrymen, Propagandists attempt to paint their own leaders with such virtue. Think of the moniker of Honest Abe. With a simple turn of the phrase, a tyrant can be painted as a paragon of virtue. It's dangerous in the fact that it's a combination of simplicity and effectiveness. So, one area where this can ring true, perhaps more so than in others, is in relation to America's so-called truth detector. That's right, folks, I'm mentioning Rush Limbaugh. All throughout the campaign, Rush attempted to walk both sides of the issues in his coverage of his good golfing buddy Trump. He even admitted in one of the early episodes of the primary process that he was perhaps biased as he knew Trump. That's part of the problem. He was unable to pull himself away from his personal feelings and provide an objective outlook as to the issues that were being pushed to the center. Worse still, he all but ignored the many shortcomings of Trump. Sure, he half-heartedly admitted that Trump wasn't a conservative, but he then went on to defend all of the populist and alleged nationalist stances assumed by the billionaire. The only reason that I can think of that would cause Rush to do this was that he had been seduced by the prospect of victory. Don't get me wrong, folks. We fully understand how demoralizing it is to go through election cycle after successive election cycle and lose. But the thing that gets me is that Rush had fully explained in the interim period that this was due to the GOP not embracing conservative positions. It's a similar line that was parroted by the likes of Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, and Michael Weiner Savage. They were adamant that the reason the Republican Party kept losing their shot for the presidency was because they had abandoned their conservative principles. Well, that is no longer the tune they sing. We see that it's a complete 180 from what they are saying and espousing today, and I think that that is part of the reason why we so aptly named this election cycle as that of betrayal.
You know, it comes down to the point of, to go along with that, the excuses that they're making, all the backpedaling. You know, up until Trump, you know, swindled his way into the office as the presidency elect, the conversations we've had with individuals regarding, you know, Trump, trying to persuade them, say, look, he's bamboozled you. He's going to fool you. He's going to take you to the cleaners. He's going to defraud you just like he's defrauded so many other people. And it's a proven fact, folks, that he has defrauded numerous people. Don't believe us. Go look at the lawsuits that he settled out of court. But wait a second. I thought he never settled out of court because he's a big winner. See, up until that point, their excuse was, yeah, but Trump. Yeah, but Trump. Yeah, but Trump this, Trump that. Now, their excuse is, well, he's not the president yet. So everything he says until he takes that oath of office, well, it can be looked at as conjecture. Yeah, he's not, you know, adhering to his campaign promises. He's walked back some of those. But he's not president yet, so we can't hold him accountable. Wrong. He made his whole campaign was centered around two things. I'm a winner with smally hands, and I'm going to build the wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. Blah. Oh, and he's going to have Hillary Clinton put in jail. But yet now, she's good people. He doesn't want to see good people go to jail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny how that works. And, you know, Jeremy, we've been discussing how this election cycle has been the one of betrayal for over a year now. It's just one of those things that cannot be ignored. It has come to the forefront over and over again. But what Limbaugh did yesterday is just beyond the pale. I mean, there's really no other way to describe this other than abandoning the last traces of a modicum of credibility. He's a shill, a lying bastard. Let's be frank, that's the only way one can accurately describe what he did. During a segment of his nationally syndicated radio program yesterday, Rush signaled approval of Trump's $1 trillion stimulus plan. Rush went even so far as to claim that conservatives would decry this as being antithetical to their traditional approach. He basically attempted to compare Trump's money dump to the modernization of airports by the federal government to something akin to the Hoover Dam or the Panama Canal. Folks, you can't make this crap up. The man who lambasted Nancy Pelosi for saying that the way you get out of debt is to spend more money is now saying that the way we fix our out-of-control government and the debt we've amassed is to spend more money. He then went on to proclaim that this is like FDR securing a 50-year guaranteed majority for the Democrats. Folks, Rush was singing the praises of the man who single-handedly entrenched the entitlement mentality in these United States of America. He was saying that we should embrace Fabianism in order to promote the Republican Party. That isn't conservatism, that's charlatanism. This chicanery is something that I would expect of a frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist, not someone who proclaims to have an advanced institute in conservative studies. I'm sorry, but there is no other way to address this than how we are here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It's this sort of thing that led us to state that 2016 is the year of betrayal. We're not even just going to confine this to the election. It is the year of betrayal. And in fact, it shows no signs of slowing down because December is already here and the betrayal is not slowing. In fact, it's only getting worse.
It's picking up steam.
Yeah.
It's picking up steam.
That said, we've made a promise to you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members, that we would be the voice of liberty and that we would also be the new resistance. Therefore, we're going to hold Rush's feet to the fire here. Folks, we've also said that we don't want you to merely take our word for it. So, I figure it's time that we hear this shocking development from the lips of the man himself, so that we can delve into the harmless, lovable little sludge ball's statement of ineptitude. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up. It's from SoundCloud. And so let me get that backed up and then get this shared so we can discuss it. So here we go. I'm about to get this started. Where did the audio go? Just one more second, folks. I had the audio terminal up. Ah, there it is. Here we go.
Actually follows through on this $1 trillion to modernize airports. You're going to have conservative arguments against it, claiming this is not how it works. This is still federal spending. It's still budget busting. It's still massively expanding the government. However, there will be tangible results that will result in improved and modernized airports, which will make them more economically booming, which they will be able to attract more traffic, more landings and takeoffs, which include fees, more cargo being moved back and forth through them. So it's going to be an interesting philosophical argument. The idea of conservatism and smaller government, less government. And on the other hand, the projects we're talking about, who builds them? I mean, the federal government built the interstate highway system. It was a federal government expense. Same thing with those two bridges. They did it in connection with the states. I mean, there was a lot of cooperation on all of these efforts, Hoover Dam in Nevada and so forth, and there were other things. And don't forget, even prior to that, we did the Panama Canal, even prior to the 1930s. The point is, in the past, with a much smaller economy and a much lower standard of living, we have been far more productive. We have built many more projects at a much faster rate before all the environmental impact studies were necessary and all this. And if Trump does this, and if there are witnessable, demonstrable results of modernization at airports, you're going to be hard-pressed to get people to find a problem with it. What are you frowning at me for? Well, of course it could backfire.
I'll tell you why they were frowning. It's because you were making up all of this fluff. You were embracing an argument for Fabianism. He was literally, folks, making an argument for frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftism there, as if that is in the best interest of we the people. It is bizarre, but it shows me that he's a shill, that he's selling out, that he's just willing to do anything for Trump, as if Trump is his orange Cheeto Jeebus coming down from Quaftopia. Well, I'm sorry. He can go to hell.
Here's the thing. First of all, I have to say this. Rush's audio absolutely sucks. Just absolutely sucks. I know we're playing it back through our system and everything, but it really sucks. With that said, maybe he can, I don't know, bow to the altar of the Cheeto Jeebus and, get a better studio or something. Maybe Trump will put him up at the top of Trump Towers. You can broadcast up there so that the whole world will know that he's turning out to be a fraud. See, he knows nothing of economics, obviously, when he makes the statements like he did. He's pushing for more passengers to come through, more landing. See, what that entails when you expand a company like that, there's costs associated with that expansion. And who's going to foot the bill? Those same passengers that show up at the airports. It's going to double the cost of flying.
Yeah, but Trump.
Well, yeah, but he's not president yet.
Uh-huh.
You see, this is where the argument goes. Philosophical debate, my ass. Lush Bimbo has no idea about philosophical debates anymore. He sits there, he pounds out all of these hardline diatribes and has no solutions whatsoever other than the crap that he's spoon-fed, and he vomits up and forgets to wipe off his fat, bulbous chin while he's sitting there doing what he's doing. I'm sick and tired of people like this. This is why, Randy, I said it's picking up steam with becoming the year of betrayal, because at one point in time, Rush Limbaugh was the voice of conservatism. At one point in time, he was. He has betrayed true conservative values and principles in accordance with the Constitution. When you're sitting there and you're bolstering up somebody who has said he has no value, sees no intrinsic value in our shared Constitution, that means that he is anti-Constitution, and you're sitting there propping him up. That means that you are propping up the death of the Constitution. Therefore, you are no longer constitutional. You are not a voice of conservatism. You are a voice coming from the rusted shut trunk of a used car lot that people have long since forgotten.
Yeah.
That's what you are.
Deal
with it.
It's interesting that Rush was perfectly willing to admit that this goes against small government. It's because, as a propagandist, and yes, that's right, folks, I am labeling Lush Bimbo as a propagandist, he knows that to assume a position counter to this would not be boomerang-proof. However, he's also banking on the thought that the American people won't be paying attention to him. He's pulling a page out of the Pavlov School of Journalism and thinking that our attention span is far too short to hold him accountable for this crap. He's done it before, but never to such a flagrant degree as this. You see, he attempts to soften the blow of this by reminding us that Trump isn't a conservative. And then he goes on to say that he'll engage in activities which don't look very conservative. And that's okay. That's why. Because he's not an ideologue. But here's the problem I have with that. It's not about being an ideologue. It's about common faruking sense. I want to take this a step further, folks, to help fully expose the chicanery that is going on with Lush Bimbo here. Let's actually define the term ideologue. I think that's something that will help shed the light of clarity on this issue. According to the good people at the Oxford Dictionary, ideologue is a noun which is defined as an adherent of an ideology, especially who is uncompromising and dogmatic. As you can see from the tone of this definition, it carries an exceedingly negative connotation. Dogmatic is an adjective, which means inclined to lay down principle as incontrovertibly true. Okay, yes, one can be dogmatic about the Constitution because it's based on the natural law tenets. However, Rush is attempting to paint conservatives here as too stiff. He thinks we're too inflexible. This is hypocritical because he used to lambaste politicians who were too flexible. What in the hell changed? It's simple, really. It's the seduction of victory. He has decided that it would help his ratings and therefore his bottom line if he embraces this new age populism. In other words, conservatism seemingly never meant a damned thing to it. To my mind, this is tantamount to what Benedict Arnold did to the cause of liberty and independence. Rush was put in charge at the proverbial West Point of conservatism and handed it over to the enemy for a new position in the rank and file of a movement which is clearly antithetical to what he's pontificated on for nearly 30 years now. I wish it weren't the case, but it clearly is. Now, it's interesting. Carlos Garcia for Glenn Beck's The Blaze penned an article entitled Rush Limbaugh. If Trump does trillion-dollar stimulus right, people will love it. Garcia rightly noted that many in the Twitter sphere recalled that conservatives once mocked MSNBC's Rachel Madcow for praising the Hoover Dam as an example of what bloated government might accomplish if we just spent enough money. At Just Carl stated that Limbaugh never did analysis that if Obama's stimulus worked, people wouldn't have a problem with it. His analysis hat is his BS hat. He went on to say that Limbaugh never compared Obama's stimulus to the Hoover Dam. You know who did? Maddow. It's truly a sad day with the alleged doctor of democracy goes forth to become a Democrat light cheerleader.
You know, it's absolutely amazing that, you know, and I'm going to tie all this in. Just be patient with us, folks. Trump talked about draining the swamp. Draining the swamp. Well, guess what? Rush Limbaugh is bathing in it. He's absolutely bathing in the swamp. Randy, we have one of our cherished listeners joining in. Glen Rocks, Wyoming. He puts on here, he says, quote, the new swamp is coming along nicely, end quote, as one of his Facebook friends just posted. Now I responded, the muckraking and dredging is astounding. Lush Bimbo is bathing in the swamp. He's basking in it. He's taking a muck bath right now, hoping that it's going to cleanse his pores with all of the stuff that he's doing.
Well, he's got to get rid of that orange filth somehow.
Yeah, well, see, this is the problem. This is the problem. See, Trump makes the notion that Washington, D.C. is a swamp. It's not a swamp. It's a cesspool. Okay? It's a cesspool. Big difference between a swamp and a cesspool. Okay? At least swamps have some kind of redeemable qualities. You know, the methane gas that's produced there, if harnessed right, you know, could be used for energy or whatever the case is. You know,
it sustains
gator
life.
hunting. You can go gator hunting in a swamp, okay? You can't go gator hunting in a cesspool. You just can't do it. No. So this whole thing of he's going to drain the swamp, no, what he's wanting to do with that whole attack is he wants to crush any kind of ideas, is what it is.
Of course
that's what it is. No, he wants the cesspool to thrive.
Yeah.
So he's lathering up people like Lush Bimbo, okay? Just giving them this little, you know, I sold you a soap on a rope for a dope. Here you go. Go take your muck bath. Climb on in. Maybe him and Little Orphan Andy Yap Yap Toto, I'm a Floozy Ann Coulter, can go skinny dipping. in this little cesspool that they've got going on. You know, whatever the case is, it's absolute crap.
Of course it
Absolute
is.
crap. And Rush Limbaugh, I know you're not listening, because if you did, your head would just cave in from all the truth that's being sent your way, because you have no words to shed back.
Yeah.
Your arguments are gone. You have
Well, you know what's interesting?
rebuttal to this.
The GOP once even put out ads lampooning Mad Cow's stance with respect to the Hoover Dam. Folks, thanks to the Blaze digging this up for us, I have the video clip here, which I'm going to play for you now. And I want you to think about what we've discussed thus far leading to this point as you watch and listen to this parody, because it literally speaks volumes about what we've been witnessing and what has been occurring here, and the type of chicanery that has become par for the course with respect to what Lush Bimbo has become. Here we go.
When you are this close to Hoover Dam, it makes you realize how small a human is in relation to this as a human project. You can't be the state who builds this. You can't even be the town who builds this. But you can be the guy that stops something like this. This is an energy infrastructure project. It's got national significance. We've got a project like this waiting for the president's go-ahead, supported by Republicans and Democrats, labor unions. It provides energy security and up to 130,000 jobs. We've got to figure out why the president thinks we're not a country that can think this big.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. Making fun of that mentality. Making fun of the mentality that Lush Bimbo was, sitting there singing the praises of it. Isn't it interesting that the Republican Party once thought that taking the position that Rush has currently taken was worth shameless mockery? Again, I'm puzzled as to why the hell this happened. I mean, I'm not, but in a rhetorical sense, I am. This is chicanery. It's the seduction of victory at the cost of one's soul. And I don't think that's something we can afford to do right now. Not when the nation stands in shambles after two of the incessant stimulus spending terms of Barack Obama. What it boils down to is that Rush and others on the right have embraced Keynesian economics. Zygmunt Dobbs said in his magnum opus, Keynes at Harvard, all arguments against this philosophy of despair, which is socialism and Keynesian economics, are called reactionary. The entrepreneur, merchant, or banker is the villain of the piece. The most capable executive and entrepreneurs are symbolized as wicked creatures who are fanatically opposed to true progress. We've all heard the left do this to the right. We all know that this is the modus operandi of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. They simply can't help themselves. Yet Rush was doing the same thing here. He dismissed the voices on the right who are rightly rejecting this. He said that people would love it because it's Trump who did it, or as long as Trump does it the right way. Folks, that's the same drivel we've heard for promoting socialist causes for generations now. It's always the same line. The reason that socialism or communism always fails, to their minds at least, is simply because the wrong people have implemented it, or they implemented it in the wrong way. But there's no right way to implement this sort of thing. It's always detrimental. Why? Because it stands in stark contrast to the natural law tenets. Because the natural law tenets are immutable. You cannot correctly implement something which is the direct and polar opposite of it. You simply can't.
And that goes without saying that, having the right people in place to implement something the right way. Well, if you have something that's in stark contrast to the natural law tenets, and you say, well, we have the right person for the job, that person is not the right person, because that person, if they're willing to implement something like that is diametrically opposed, that means that they're diametrically opposed. It goes right back to my point of Lush Bimbo, the muck-bathing swamp dragon, sitting there bolstering up Trump when Trump is anti-constitutional. That makes Rush anti-constitutional. And I know we're going to get flack from this, but I don't care, Randy. I'm sick and tired of people coming along when there's a line drawn in the sand, and these individuals walk up, take their foot, wipe out the line, and they say, oh, I don't see a line. Yeah, but Trump. And then when you draw another line, this one more direct, more obvious, and then they walk up and cross that line out. See, it's not... They do that to try and absolve themselves of standing on the wrong side of things. They can say, well, I'm not on any side. I'm not on the wrong side because I don't see a line. Well, that's because you're blinded by stupidity. That's why. Because you're ignorant. You're willfully ignorant. You have become a useful idiot.
Yeah. And, Glenn has made a good point here. He said he's very worried about how many more gators and crocs are going to move in. Well, I actually want to touch on that, Glenn, because what Trump is doing here is he's embracing the same policy positions implemented by Herbert Hoover. Recall, we've lamented before that Trump will be this generation's Herbert Hoover. He will serve as a great detriment to true dyed-in-the-wool constitutional compositionists. That is, he'll set our efforts back by generations. Why? Because he's going to fill the swamp up with all of these people that claim to be conservatives. This is because also that he'll be blamed for the economic failings that come with his, and the left will point the finger at constitutional compositionists, saying that we were the problem, that it is our fault because Trump is a conservative, even though he's not. That's part of the whole swamp thing. It's part of subterfuge. It's part of trying to cast out this dragnet to redefine the conservative movement. And, adding insult to injury, the Republican Party will also try to blame this on the so-called outsiders, because remember, Trump billed himself as an outsider. They'll use this as another opportunity to finally push dissenting voices out of the party, as the Democrat Party did over the last 30 years. There's really no way around this. I wish that there was, but it's what they believe in, and it's what they have been incrementally working towards for the past century and a half. And so we see that by repopulating the swamp, trying to sell it as beach oceanfront property is how he goes about playing his game of two-card Monte. It's the same thing that he did with Trump steak, same thing that he did with Trump vodka, same thing that he did with Trump University. All of these failed schemes of his are the true characteristic of the man. And so he embraces this, which then allows the media to run amok, as we said they would, to try and place the blame wrongfully at our feet. And it is going to be very difficult to overcome it. And of course, the worst attribute of this all is that it's so apparent if one examines this from a constitutional lens. These forces are not in opposition to one another. They merely disagree upon the speed of the increments. Whether a cancer is slow or aggressive, the end result will ultimately be death if it goes untreated. That's the thing. You don't treat cancer by saying people will love it. You treat cancer by killing it. Yet Rush is here singing the praises of the malignant ideology that has been leading this nation astray for far too long now. He's being an apologist for the worst sort of ideology that has been repeated throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. This is not the way to restore the nation to the path of prosperity. Rather, this is how a nation commits wholesale suicide. Folks, we shouldn't be singing the praises of this idiocy. We should condemn it with every fiber of our being.
Well, this is the moral relativism that we've been speaking about for a year and 3 months. For 15 months now, moral relativism has been one of our key foundational warnings. See, it's just like you mentioned. The leftists and the Fabians are going to blame constitutional compositionists such as ourselves because Trump has adopted the label of being a conservative. They're going to lump that in. And the Republicans are going to do the same thing. See, they're going to blame people like us because all of this happened, but they're going to lay the blame squarely at our feet, and the only response they're going to have is, why didn't you stop this? See, it's incumbent upon us, those who understand the Constitution, who cherish it, who value it, and know that the inner workings and depths of it and what it truly means to the sanctity of our republic. It's our obligation to put a stop to these things. If you are an American citizen, it is your obligation to put a stop to these things. And see, the way they're going to label us is the same way that people labeled Germans. Hell, it's the same way that FDR labeled the Japanese, the Germans, the Italians, and even Russians when he came up with the internment camps. Well, you're of Japanese lineage and bloodline. They're our enemies. Therefore, you must be our enemy too. You're of German bloodline. Germans were Nazis. They committed atrocities. Well, because all Nazis were German, which isn't really the case. Not all Nazis were German. But the vast majority of Germans were Nazis that supported Hitler. But because they can't make that separation of reality and that distinction that just because a person is German or because they were Japanese or Italian doesn't mean that they had allegiance or any kind of credence or condoned any of those atrocities that happened. But yet, we're the ones that are going to get blamed for this because Trump has hijacked, just like with Rush Limbaugh's help, Muckzilla, as I'm going to call him from now on, with Muckzilla's help, they have done exactly what the Fabians are notorious for doing. They have hijacked terminology, words, and phrases, flipped them up on its head, and used it for an ulterior motive. That's exactly what they're doing. We have been warning about this and warning about this. And you know what, Randy? I'm tired of warning people about this. It's time that Rush Limbaugh, Muckzilla himself, goes away. It's time that he starts losing listeners. His ratings crash through the floor. He becomes non-existent. Because, see, part of our contract with our government pertains to freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Well, who is the press? We the people are the press. Not Muckzilla. He's part of the press, but now he's part of the problem. So therefore, because he's utilizing his First Amendment right of free speech, he's doing so in a fashion that is going to and is infringing upon the rights of other individuals. Why? Because everything he's saying is propping up anti-constitutional rhetoric and propaganda in an effort to destroy people's rights. That makes it to where he is criminal in what he is doing. He is using his rights to abridge the rights of other individuals.
And it's something that cannot be ignored, because as long as we allow this to continue unabated, it is going to worsen. It will be exacerbated. This is what these people always do. And it's a shame to see that Rush Limbaugh has gone down that path, but it is a choice, an open and obvious choice that he made of his own fruition and free will. And it's just one of those things that keeps coming back to the surface time and time again and goes directly back as to why we named this year the year of betrayal. And he is literally buying into the seduction of victory. Now, Paterico over at Red State also went on the offensive against Russia's idolatry of Trump. He explained that Rush didn't state why Trump's position was wrong. Rather, he declares that the pointy heads will have their theoretical discussions, but Trump will call it an investment and it will work. Of course, he said that If this sounds familiar, it should. Because Obama and the Democrats have referred to their governmental spending as investment. That's the thing, folks. Rush has gone fully overboard. His Gulf Stream has crashed into the ocean, and he's attempting to convince us that it's now a luxury cruise liner. Of course, we know better than that. We know better because we follow the Constitution. You know, that document that Rush used to admire? Well, apparently, the admiration is gone permanently now. And we're at the point where the biggest voices on the right are the biggest sellouts. They have become nothing short of worthless shills. Betrayal is the name of the game, and they're all lining up to see who can betray us the most. Rush and Hannity don't care about the truth. They have been seduced by victory, and it's the only thing that crosses their lizard brains. I'd rather follow the supreme law of the land. After all, it has guided us and kept us free for over 2 centuries. I don't know why people would forget that. If you want victory, follow the thing that has led us to victory after successive victory, the Constitution. Of course, that's not what these frauds want to do. They want to feel as though they are part of a grand new movement, a new movement that saved us from Hillary. Okay, that sounds great and all, but how did they save us? How did they save us from this if we are going to embrace a spending plan that is more than anything Obama attempted to do in a singular plan? The answer, of course, is that they haven't saved us from a damn thing. They have opened the floodgates to another disastrous scheme that will leave the nation and people reeling for generations to come. If we wanted more crony deals like Carrier and more alleged infrastructure spending like this $1 trillion debacle, why didn't we just vote for Hillary? Stop and think about that for a moment. Oh, sure, you can say she'd do more of it for longer, but you cannot deny that this is the same crap. We don't need this, nor do we want it. The truth of the matter is that we can't afford this crap. But people like Rush and Hannity and Ingram and Savage just lap it all up. They broke conservative ideology, and now they must buy it.
Here's the thing. To me, yeah, Hillary would be doing this more. She would be doing it longer. But nobody's ever stopped and taken a moment to just realize one very simple thing that we've mentioned numerous times. See, people can only do something to you if you allow them to do it. It's a very simple concept. It's a concept that the left has embraced with the empowering of women movement. You know, here's your rape whistle, kit. You know, and nobody can rape you if you blow this whistle, because blowing the whistle means no. See, they've tried to sissify everything. And now the Trump camp is doing the same thing. They're getting people to buy into this whole economical drivel. Well, it's the economy. Guess what, folks? The economy means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing if you do not have any rights of which to obtain or enjoy the fruits of your labor. Nothing. You can have all the money in the world. You can have the best economy the world has ever seen. But that is not what makes you a free society. It is not the ability or the having of the money to go out and buy the things that you want, to make sure that your house payment is paid, to where you have no financial worries whatsoever. Because guess what? Financial worries come and go. Everybody deals with them. I've dealt with them. Randy's dealt with them. All of our listeners at some point in time has had to deal with a financial worry. Financial constraints, we're short on bills this week, or we're short on bills this month, whatever the case is. There's things in that occur within each of our lives that's called life. Emergencies come up. There's things that we cannot foresee. Having the money to take care of those problems, it doesn't foresee something to the effect of somebody breaking into your home with nothing more than the sole purpose and desire of killing you and your family. What good is your money going to do for that? Well, I'll just buy guns to protect my home. Well, how are you going to do that if you trade your Second Amendment rights for the fleeting sense of security, i.e. having the money to just throw at all of your problems? See, you can't buy life. You can't buy protection for your family, because in order to have the protection, you have to have the full legal means of utilizing it. That falls within your constitutional rights, and people are giving them away willingly because they bought into this rusted trunk car salesman, used car salesman notion. We have to have a strong economy. Now, I'm not against having a strong economy, but it, again, Randy, it comes back to it has to be implemented the right way. And the only way, this is the way that Rush, aka Muckzilla, has failed to mention. Sean Hannity, Michael Weiner Savage, all of the pointy little heads that are sitting on the porch, wagging their tails, begging for their milk bones, waiting for their dopey soap on a rope bar, have failed to mention. The only way to have a good economy is to follow the precise fundamental principles of the Constitution. That's the only way to have a good housing market. That's the only way to have a good job market. That's the only way to have proper leadership in our elected positions. It's the only way to have a proper legal system.
It flows from the free market. The Constitution creates a free market. Why? Because the two fundamental pillars that have made this nation great in her relatively brief yet illustrious history are self-accountability and self-responsibility working together to give us self-determination. I know that we've mentioned that time and time again on previous episodes, but it really does tie into that. The only way that you can go out and ply your avocation is to have the right to do so, is to be able to exercise and enjoy those fundamental and inalienable rights that were endowed to you by your creator, the God of nature himself. But that is not what Rush was getting at, as you mentioned, Jeremy. Rush has, just had copious amounts of Trump vodka here. He is so indoctrinated and so intoxicated.
He's gone full Trump-tard. You never go full Trump-tard.
Yeah. He has essentially allowed himself to be seduced by the notion of victory. But just because somebody wins doesn't always mean they're right. Let's look at, Adolf Hitler. He won. Was he right? I don't think so.
Mussolini.
Mussolini. Tojo, Adaki Tojo. No, none of these charlatans were right, but they did win. They did win political power. So have we really gone to this schoolyard bully type mentality? Because that is beneath the American people. That is beneath our values. That is beneath everything that we have ever stood for or represented. And one would think that Rush Limbaugh, who has been engaging in this business for damn near 30 years, could Farouking figure that out.
Yeah. And see, it goes to the point of that whole mentality. Well, my guy won, so... whatever, I don't care what anybody else says. See, that's the kind of mentality that these people want to use as a set of cojones swinging between their legs when they walk up and smooth out the line that was been drawn in the sand for them. And see, this is how I look at it, Randy, and this would be perceived as weak in the minds of a lot of other individuals. See, I'll draw that line again. But this time I'm going to move the line. I'm going to push them back, and then I'm going to draw the line again. See, they want to bathe in the swamp. They want to stick their heads in the beaches of their posteriors, that's fine. I'll just end up finding a cliff and we'll just push them off the cliff. Or as our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward would say, this is my planet, I'll just throw them off.
Yeah.
So, and the whole point is, these individuals, when it comes down to it, they're going to get cramps in their legs. Their feet are going to get tired from all of the scribbling and stamping out of the lines that we're drawing for them. And when they think they got one more stamp left in them, or one more swift kick in the dirt to scribble out or cross out that line, there's not going to be a line there for them. Because it's going to come to a time to where the line has to be stopped. You have to stop drawing lines, and then you just have to let them wonder where the line is.
Well, you know where the term deadline comes from? You know where the term deadline comes from? This is interesting. It comes from military history. A deadline is a line you draw in the sand, and if you cross that line, you'd be shot.
Yeah, gun line in correctional facilities.
Yeah, it's a deadline. That's where that term comes from. But I'm going to move on just a little bit here because there is still a lot to get to, folks. It is a very information chock full episode this evening. You know, there's another thing that Trump's loudest acolytes have been praising him for a long time now. They have claimed that he would bring jobs to America. Their contention here is that because he was such a successful businessman, quote unquote, Trump will be able to fix all of our economic woes with one fell swoop of the pen. There can be no question that they grow giddy over the thought of government-created jobs. However, Trump made one move this morning that caused the stocks of one of our largest airline manufacturers, the Boeing company, located in Seattle, Washington, to plummet as he cancels an order for the next plane to be Air Force One. Trump boldly proclaimed that the reason he canceled the order was that the costs were out of control. He lamented the fact that the plane would cost $4 billion. However, this disregards the fact that it is going to hurt jobs in the manufacturing sector. I thought the whole reason that people praised Trump was that he would bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America. Once again, we see that nothing could be further from the truth. The odd thing about it, folks, is that this is similar to President Obama canceling the next presidential helicopter program back in 2009. Just as his wife, Melania Trump, copied Michelle Obama during her Republican National Convention speech, Trump is already plagiarizing the presidential playbook of that Fabian socialist jackass, Barack Hussein Obama. So he embraces the stimulus-style spending of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and then copies the policy positions of Barack Hussein Obama when it comes to badly needed infrastructure for the government. And normally, I am all against government infrastructure. Of course, no one discusses the job losses and detriment this causes to the private company Boeing. I don't know about you folks, but I am growing tired of the hypocrisy that has become the hallmark of President-elect Donald J. Trump. Time and again, his loudest acolytes will genuflect themselves to apologize for his every inconsistency. Every tired excuse in the book is being thrown at the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people. Enough! Enough is enough. The deadline is drawn.
You know, again, I could speak to this because, not that it matters, and Randy, you know that I prefer not to, as people would say, flaunt my credentials. But I have a background in business. I have a business degree. And it's very simple to understand basic economics. See, what he's talking about here is taking with Boeing and looking at it as creating a macroeconomics problem in a microeconomics field is what he's doing. He doesn't care, once again, regarding we the people. Boeing stock plummets. What does that mean for Boeing? They don't have a huge contract, a government contract. And see, manufacturing jobs, if you look at various different manufacturers, let's look at General Motors, for example. General Motors, back during World War II, had the largest government contract. The largest government contract comparable to today's standards. If that contract that General Motors had in World War II was applied and analyzed it according to the economic value in today's standards, it would be the largest government contract the world has ever seen in the history of the world.
Well, it was then.
It was then.
And that's the thing.
And
that's the thing. That was in a very precipitous time that it was very necessary, because there was no other way to make us prepared. We were not ready for war.
Right. And the point being, when government contracts are sought after commodities. Why? Because the government will pay. It's not coming out of their coffers, so to speak. It's coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. Our taxes go to pay for government contracts. That's a fact. Okay? But when a company is not given a government contract and their stock plummets, now they have to scale back their workforce, which means in order for that company to thrive, in order for Boeing to thrive, to regain what they have lost, they're going to have to hike the prices up on things. Well, guess what? Let's tie this all the way back into this whole airport thing. Gee, doesn't Boeing have the contracts for a lot of, airplane manufacturers or companies provide the airplanes for those manufacturers? So let's see. He wants to boost up the airline industry, this and that, but yank a government contract off the plate. See, now they're going to have to scale back workers. They're going to have to cut people, fire people, lay people off.
Well, actually, they're not going to have to, and I'm going to explain why. They're not going to have to now because their stock started rallying, because their CEO came out on Twitter and said, no, there was no $4 billion contract. It was $170 million to update the existing plane, and that we look forward with working with our Air Force partners. Now, isn't that interesting? Once again, Trump goes out and recklessly just runs his mouth and tries to set the market into free fall. Now, here's the other interesting thing. Just about 30 minutes before Trump went on to Twitter with his smally hands, his stubbly, wobbly fingers, he was being attacked on a news program or an interview where the Boeing company stated they have concerns about his foreign policy positions and his economic positions.
So let's see. He takes offense to that. He makes up all this crap.
Thin skin.
He runs his mouth. There's a backlash that comes, and he has to go and do damage control. Yeah, but he's not even president yet. Then he shouldn't be doing this crap. Yeah. Then he should just shut his mouth, take his little bib with his smally hands, and gag himself with it. Because what needs to happen, the reason why I think Boeing is still going to have to lay people off is simply this. They've had to run damage control themselves in order to save face from their stock fully and completely collapsing and causing utter ruin. There is going to be layoffs. They're going to have to lay people off. However, it will be a temporary thing. But at the same time, in order for their stock to regain what they've lost, because see, this is something that A, either Trump doesn't care about, or B, has no clue about whatsoever. Within the stock market, when you have a loss, you have to make up ground to get back where you were, and then you have to do even more to get back ahead of where you were projected to be at that point in time. So they're still going to have to raise prices on their products, all the jets and airliners that they build. They're still going to have to do that, which means, guess what happens? In today's economy, and people want to talk about economic relief and this and that, who's going to foot the bill for it? It's going to come out of our pockets. Even though we don't fly, and we don't, I've never flown commercially. I'd like to try it at least once, but I just never really had the inclination or the need to do it.
I have all the time. It's a freaking nightmare.
Well, there you go. And broadening the scope and the infrastructure of the airports, more baggage, more people coming in. Well, they're going to have to hire more people in order to handle that. But guess what's going to happen? When you have to hire more people, you have to raise your wages, your prices in order to cover the wages. See, this is the whole problem of raising the minimum wage up to $15 an hour. Companies didn't go for it because they couldn't afford it. Right. But yet, didn't Trump say something about having a national minimum wage?
Of $10. Of $10, but Ivanka wanted $15.
Okay, so split the difference, $12.50. Well, let's look at that $12.50 an hour that people are going to have to pay. Again, the price of a Big Mac would set it up to about $7 or $8 for a freaking sandwich. That's really, not all that good. I mean, I like Big Macs. It's one of my favorite sandwiches from McDonald's, but I've had much better sandwiches from local bistros and delis. I prefer those. But on the fly, I'll stop and buy a Big Mac. I don't, it's fine. Purple ooze or pink ooze, whatever it is, it's most assuredly better than that muck in the cesspool that Muckzilla is, swallowing and, tongue lashing around in.
But, to me, the thing that really gets me on this is like the carrier deal, Trump is using the government to pick winners and losers. That's not what our government was designed to do. However, this doesn't make a lick of difference to those who've prostrated themselves at the feet of the almighty Quaff.
It's like it's glorified insider training.
Yeah, they think he knows best. And this is the way to allegedly make America great again. Don't make me laugh. This is a sickening display of the worst attributes of the left, and it's now being packaged as conservatism. Again, we run the risk of the dark and twisted game of semantics that we've warned you about since our premiere episode of September 11th of 2015. Conservative is being warped away from its traditional roots and meaning. The GOP has officially become the Me Too party of socialism of the highest order. That's not something we can afford to become. It's a betrayal of our time-honored traditions and institutions. Of course, that doesn't matter. The seduction of victory is like a siren song driving conservatives to deep water to drown. There's really no other way to describe this. People have gotten so tied up in the image that they've projected onto Trump that they can't tear themselves away from him. He was seen as their last hope, as they bought into the fear-mongering that has become the new norm of the American system of polity. I think this is one of the most disgusting chapters of living memory. These are dark and dangerous times we're living in now. And there's really no way around that, folks. Trump has bamboozled the people, and we tried to warn them. Yet they chose to disregard our near-prophetic warnings here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. But we will not abandon our mission of promoting and advocating for our shared Constitution. It's too important.
Well, Randy, we're joined by one of our favorite first-class passengers. And you know what? Donna Cephas, you're beyond. We're going to have to create a special class for you and Glenn. High above first class passenger. Donna joins us now, and she says, I knew people that worked at Boeing. The people only kept their jobs based on upcoming contracts. I'm sure the employees won't be sleeping well tonight. And then she says, Trump could ruin our economy in 140 characters. It doesn't make me feel comfy.
It's a damn good point.
That's a very good point. I mean, it's just Twitterism. I mean, Fabianism, Coffeeism, Nazism, socialism. Why not Twitterism now too? I mean, we can certainly place that at his heels.
Death by tweet.
Death by tweet. It's great, but and her point is absolutely valid. I mean, he spends more time, doing this. And I saw a tweet from him. Earlier today. I was just scrolling through, and I think it was early this morning. It was like 6:30 this morning. And he tweets out, he says, something to the effect of, people complain about me going and complaining on Twitter. I wouldn't have to go on Twitter so much if the media would just pay me more attention.
Oh, God.
Wait a second, you egotistical, boof-headed, moronic piece of crap. You have had more media attention than anybody, any candidate, this whole campaign.
3 times as much.
Combined.
3 times as much.
3 times as much combined
Mm-hmm.
than anybody. You still have media whores. Yes, they are media whores. They are selling their souls and their integrity to pay you lip service.
Oh, gosh. Well, the Wright...
Egotistical, narcissistic...
Yeah. The Wright Scoop had published this story on Trump's ditching of Boeing, and I noticed in the comment section that one of the commenters said that if Cruz had done this, we would be singing his praises. The commenter also noted that the stock has since started to rebound, as I had mentioned. But here's the thing. Cruz never once promoted or advocated for the type of infrastructure spending that is being championed by the Trumpolini. This is something that comes straight out of the Fabian socialist playbook. The other thing about this is that the Trump acolytes are still convinced that our loyalties are to a candidate or to a person. Nothing could be further from the truth. We swear allegiance to the only thing that matters in this country, our shared constitution. They act as though we follow the same sort of cult of personality that they've fallen prey to. Yet we know for a fact that this isn't the case. If Cruz had begun to assume hypocritical positions, we would have called him out with just as much zeal as we're calling out President-elect Donald Trump. That's just the way it is. But the sore winners in the Trump camp don't care. They have an insatiable need to project their own shortcomings onto everyone else. It allows them to arrogantly assume a position of an alleged moral high ground, except there's nothing moral about what Trump has done here. On the contrary, Trump is driving this nation ever further down a path that distances and divorces ourselves from the supreme law of the land, the Constitution. If they have a problem with this fact, tough. They need to own the things they have done. And they need to admit that they are the ones who adopted a mentality that is no different than that which is espoused by the left. There's no use in mincing words here. They sold their souls, and there's always a price for such actions. Part of our role as the new resistance is to hold everyone accountable for their words, deeds, and actions. We know that this same treatment will be accorded to us. That's why we've always opened up to the things we've said and owned up to them and the positions we hold. We take accountability for what we say and what we do. However, we are also secure in the knowledge that we assume the same position as our founding fathers. We advocate for the longest lasting constitution in the entire course of human events. I don't think that's a bad position to take. But there's no denying that Trump has assumed a great plethora of positions which are antithetical to the Constitution. And to our mind, that makes him no different than Obama, no different than Hillary, no different than the tin pot dictators of the past.
You know, Donna puts quoted on here again, you know, when we were talking about the party, you know, she says, the party of Twitter? Oh, hell no. And you know, Randy, I had to respond. I said, you know, we'll call it the Twitter Reich, or perhaps better yet, the Tweet Reich. The Tweet Reich. We'll call it the Tweet Reich from here on out. I mean, hell, that's the kind of party you want. It's certainly not the Conservative Party anymore. He said so as much. The Republican Party is not the party of conservatism. He said that.
Oh, I know.
So we'll just, you know, we'll label his party, since he wants to have all of his, you know, coif boots and, you know, bleach blonde shirts. And in there, we'll just call him the Tweet Reich. You know, the alt Reich and the Tweet Reich. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of these things are astonishingly aligning with the events that unfolded in Nazi Germany.
Oh, I know.
You know, all these little sects and different, you know, groups and whatnot. So, I mean, it's just it comes to the point that, as you said, we can ill afford allowing these things to perpetuate. We have to stand our ground. The line in the sand has been drawn, and they find it fitting to scuff it out as if it doesn't exist. Or, as you so aptly said before, they like to move the goalpost, you know, further and further, or in the direction to where they could score the easiest. Now, Randy, you and I know, speaking for myself especially, I prefer the underdog. I prefer the underdog because the underdog, A, is unpredictable. B, the underdog, when they pull through, it's a total upset with everybody, and nobody has any recourse or rebuttal to what happens. Mm-hmm. See, I think we are the underdogs, and I want to play that as we are the underdogs. We are the voice of the new resistance. We are going to upset a lot of people. And as I've stated before, I have a daily mantra, a philosophy, if you will. If I'm not upsetting or pissing at least one person off a day, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. And people think that I'm nuts and crazy. Well, that's kind of a bad outlook on life. No, it's a perfect perspective on life, because if I'm making somebody angry, it gives them pause to think. Mm-hmm. And when people start to think on their own free will, rather than being persuaded by outside influences that would rather have them just regurgitate what's being fed to them, if you cause people to think, those people will then cause other people to think. Eventually, you'll have everybody thinking for themselves, which is what the founding fathers wanted and intended for this country. That falls right in line with self-accountability and self-responsibility. Or as, who was it? Voltaire, I think it was. It says, I think, therefore I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now here's the thing about the whole aspect of Trump being conservative. Well, we know that little Ivanka, went out and met with Albert Gore, the chief guru of the global warming religion. He said we had some very good meetings. We had some very good ideas, and she wants to be very active with global warming and stopping it. All right. So how is Rush Limbaugh, the lush bimbo himself, going to deal with this? How is he going to obfuscate the truth and spin this to be, well, that's a conservative position. Well, even though it's not conservative, it'll guarantee us 50 days with my gold-plated microphone here, my RE320 microphone that's from the 1970s, which is probably where I should go back and do an extra line of coke so that I don't ruin my career in the future. I don't know. But what it comes down to is that this consistent inconsistency has got to stop. This shilling for Trump has got to stop. And Rush, you really ought to give it up, man. You really ought to give it up. You've lost your touch.
Yeah. Well, he's lost his touch, and I would like to see his listener base gone, because the more that people regurgitate again things that he is saying. You know what his argument is to the whole Ivanka Trump meeting with Man Bear Pig there in the muck bath? It's, well, she's not first lady yet. No, she's not first lady yet.
Well, actually, it's that she's his daughter. She's not president. I had a friend tell me. I had a dear friend tell me this, and that I just need to relax because she's not the president and he's not president yet. Oh, okay. So there is a guy breaking into my house with a shotgun. I just need to relax because he hasn't shot anybody yet, but he's breaking and entering and is pointing a loaded weapon at me. No, I don't need to grab my gun and act in self-defense. I just need to relax because he hasn't shot anybody yet.
Yeah. Or even more so. I mean, and I gave you this scenario earlier today when we were discussing this. Hey, SWAT team? Yeah, we know that there's a guy with a bomb jacket on inside a bank, and he hasn't hit the detonator switch yet, so just kind of relax. Don't take your crosshairs off of him. Just kind of relax. We want to see what he's going to do. Really? Here's an idea. Why don't you adopt Muckzilla? And this goes to your dear friend there, Randy. Go back to, I don't know, late 1970s Israel. The what was it? I believe it was a hijacking of a plane, terrorists and whatnot. See, the Israelis have it right. Their idea is when there's a hostage situation, and folks, don't think for a minute that our country's not being taken hostage, because it has, right under our very noses. We are in a hostage crisis right now. We, the people, are being held hostage. Our Constitution is being held hostage. But see, the Israelis, and it's beautiful because it works for them, and they haven't had any more acts of terrorism to that magnitude since then, because they've adopted the mentality that, you have hostages? Well, we already count them as being no longer living. So therefore, we're going to breach, we're going to come in, we're going to neutralize the threat, and, hey, if the hostages that we believe are no longer alive happen to be alive, that's a bonus. That's what needs to happen. That is how you deal with terrorists. And yes, Donald Trump and all of his little bib-wearing, muck-bathing pinheads are terrorists. They are terrorists against our Constitution. They are terrorists against our rights and the rights of everybody else. Because they are propping up and perpetuating this notion of a Fabian Quafftopian socialist coming in thinking he's going to make America great again. He's going to save us. As those two jackbooted nitwits in Novi, Michigan, I'm still going to pull them out. Oh, there's God, and then there's Trump. He's the second coming of Christ.
So does that make him twad?
Something to that effect. I mean, I have a little bit more colorful name in that regard, but we'll save that for when our flight attendant disperses the alcohol at the end of the show.
Of course.
And she refuses to, just throw her out of the plane. I'm pretty sure. Aim for Man Bear Pig, okay?
It goes beyond the pale here. And the fact that Ivanka is going to have his ear tells me that he is going to push this global warming nonsense. And again, it goes right back to what these people were saying. And let me take a step back to the Boeing issue for a moment. That same dear friend of mine wanted to say that she supports what Donald Trump has done with the Boeing contract cancellation. She contended that the current plane that is used as the personal aircraft of the president is a mere 2 years old. That being said, she tried to disagree with me with respect to the impact that the cancellation has on the paying jobs at Boeing. She claimed that the reason their stock plummeted is because they are in left-wing Washington state, but that doesn't correlate with the facts on the ground. In fact, the stock started falling directly after Trump went on to the Twitter sphere to say that it was ridiculous to pay $4 billion for this aircraft. You know what it is? He hates Air Force One because he can't have his name painted on it. He wants to have that damn plane he's always had. That piece of crap from when he bamboozled the people with Trump shuttle. But anyway, okay. It's important to keep the things in mind that the fleet does need to be updated. There's more than one 747. Because what if there's a 9/11 type incident and one of the planes is damaged? We need to have a backup. I mean, that's just common sense. But no, that's not what enters the little Trumply minds, the harebrains. She wanted to say that it was with Washington State. That had nothing to do with it. Washington State didn't make Trump open that stupid mouth of his. His lack of inhibition, his inability to have any type of self-control led him to do that. And it frightens me that the market is so volatile that it just starts to plummet. Their stock started to plummet. This was what the whole Antitrust Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, this whole push to also get rid of insider trading was all about. But no, not to them.
Here's a question. Let's look at another leftist state, okay, in the Union, if you will. Massachusetts. There's a firearm manufacturer in Massachusetts. How's their stock doing? Is their stock plummeted because it's a left-wing state?
No.
No. I'll tell you why. Because aside from any other industry, the firearm industry and manufacturing industry is the only industry, and history has proved this, the only history or manufacturing position and the only industry that no matter what the outcome is of any election has flourished and thrived. It seems to do much better in regard to sales when you have an anti-Second Amendment individual elected, such as Obama. I remember when he was elected in 2009, I got my AR-15 in 2010. Okay? I bought the components, I put it together myself, and it, all in all, I have probably, I don't know, with all the accoutrements and attachments and various different things that, high capacity magazines is leftist want to call them. No, it's just a standard issue magazine that comes with a 30-round magazine, and
the
banana
20,
clip. The 20 of those that I have. Anyways, I think I have maybe over the years probably $950 to $1,000 wrapped up in that firearm. But see, come 2012, they were flying off the shelf at roughly $900 to $1,200 a piece, base price, with nothing on them. And sales didn't plummet.
No. Just like how the media was trying to say that the sales would plummet since Trump got in. Actually, no, on Black Friday, they met and surpassed their previous record, which was the year before. It's because we know what Trump is. We know the positions that Trump has held for the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth. It is not a position that's in line with the Constitution. It is not a position that is for supporting firearms. Hell, he supported the Dianne Frankenstein assault weapons ban of 2013 that, thank God, failed. But he funded that. But he's a friend of the Second Amendment? That's what they say? Oh, well, he's not president yet? Oh, yeah, but Trump. It's always that. It's that same line of drivel over and over again, repeated to the point of ad nauseum. Well, enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Isn't he even tapping Mitt Romney
as to be Secretary of State? But apparently that's out now.
Okay, but see, here's the thing. Here's another direct correlation of him being anti-Second Amendment. For anybody who claims that they're for the Second Amendment to even consider or even think of the notion of having Mitt Romney as cabinet member.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney, the governor of Massachusetts, passed signed 7 pieces of legislation that violated the Second Amendment.
Yep.
Well, he had no choice. He absolutely
had plenty of choice. He had plenty of choice. He had a veto pin.
I'm vetoing it. Override my veto. And he didn't do it. He caved.
Yep. Well, folks, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Folks, she isn't intoxicated by the seduction of victory, nor will she try to seduce you. She's just there to pour alcohol. If she does try to seduce you or try to be intoxicated instead of pouring your alcohol, just push her out of the plane. As always, folks. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined this evening by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We'd like to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even topic suggestions, please feel free to leave them either here on the YouTube page in the live chat, or once that's done in the comment sections, or on our Google Plus page, or even our Facebook page. On top of this, we invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX, and there you'll find the departure board that lists Jeremy and I's personal Twitter account, the Blogspot account where we put up alternative links to the video and audio-only versions of our state-of-the-art radio program, and I am trying to catch up on that, folks, I swear. And then there's the Cafe Press account. Jeremy, since we are in the holiday period, tell them a bit about the stocking stuffers we have available at the Cafe Press.
Stocking stuffers are just the beginning of it. We have trunk stuffers, as we can call them, or decorations for your vehicle, decorations for yourself or your loved ones and friends and family. Hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts with hoodies, sweatshirts without hoodies, neckties, party favors, drinking glasses, license plate covers, you name it, it's probably there. And if it's not, let us know. We'll see what we can do about getting it there. But before we conclude for the evening, I want to thank, again, Glenn, Rocks, Wyoming, and Donna Seafast for joining us. Both of you are superb passengers, for beyond first-class passengers. You're top-notch in our book. We appreciate the feedback. You're joining in with us and your commentary. We couldn't do this show without you, because we do this show for you all, for the sense of empowerment.
And we hope that both of you and all of you have a very Merry Christmas, as we are coming up on that season. Enjoy your families, friends, and loved ones, and we will see you again next time. Please do take care.